first burial ground in Tunbridge Wells was at Holy Trinity Church in the centre of town. Built in 1829 and consecrated in 1830, Holy Trinity served the growing population and became a central place of worship. Designed by Decimus Burton, it stands as a prime example of Gothic revival architecture. Initially overseen by the Reverend Thomas Birch and later by Canon Edward Hoare, the church's religious direction took shape under Hoare's influence. A staunch proponent of evangelical Anglicanism, Hoare helped establish Trinity's reputation for theological clarity. The first burial, that of 14-year-old Elizabeth Coxhead, took place on the 27th of April 1830. However, by the early 1840s, concerns were raised about the need for a new burial ground. In response, 3 acres of steeply sloping rough pasture known as Ladies' Wood, part of Brick Kiln Farm, were purchased in 1848 from John Waithman for £300. The total cost of establishing the cemetery came to £1,200, which is approximately £136,000 today. In 1849, Trinity New Cemetery, today known as Woodbury Park Cemetery, was laid out on what was then the edge of town. It served the ecclesiastical districts of Trinity, Christchurch, St James, St John and St Peter. Until 1873, Woodbury Park Cemetery was the town's primary burial ground for Anglicans, while also accommodating some Protestant nonconformists. Canon Hoare's willingness to allow these burials reflects both his Protestant solidarity and the broader religious landscape of Victorian England. The first 2 burials in the new cemetery took place on the 12th of October 1849, those of 7-week-old Horace Smith and Thomas Oakes, aged 1 year and 3 months. The last recorded burial was that of 88-year-old Maria Hake on the 11th of October 1934. Over 6,000 burials are recorded in the burial register, although the deaths of several hundred stillborn and unbaptized children went unrecorded. Throughout these years, people from all walks of life were laid to rest here, from prominent figures such as the Reverend Henry Thomas Austin, Jane Austen's brother, local landscape artist Charles Tattersall Dodd, pharmacist Jacob Bell, founder of the Pharmaceutical Society, and Quebec philanthropist Geoffrey Hale, to his brother Bernard Hale, whose legal work safeguarded public access to Ashdown Forest. Among the many buried are also tradespeople, workers, servants, and those who came to Tunbridge Wells seeking a better life, like John D. Englehart, a renowned miniature painter. When Woodbury Park Cemetery was consecrated, Queen Victoria had been on the throne for 12 years, and the average life expectancy was just 40 for men and 42 for women. 1 in 4 deaths in the 19th century were children under the age of 1. Today, the design of Woodbury Park Cemetery is a Grade 2 listed example of a mortuary garden. Making good use of its steep slopes, the paths wind romantically below a rocky crag where the sandstone mortuary chapel is perched, giving the impression of a greater-sized plot. The carefully sited clusters of trees and vistas from the chapel are typical of the landscaped approach advocated by pioneer garden and cemetery designer John Claudius Loudon. Woodbury Park Cemetery has developed from its rural beginnings as a hilly section of farmland on the edge of Tunbridge Wells into an award-winning, important green space that remains an integral part of the heavily populated St John's area of the town. Woodbury Park Cemetery is a rich haven for wildlife and native plants. Created from unimproved grassland, it supports a diverse mix of wildflowers including red clover, wild strawberry and lady's smock. Certain areas are left uncut to protect vital habitats for insects such as butterflies, bumblebees and solitary bees like the ivy mining bee. A bug hotel built by local school children, along with a tree trail featuring RHS-style labels, invites visitors to explore and learn about the site's natural wonders. Between 1970 and 1998, botanist Mary Page recorded over 150 plant species here. The Friends of Woodbury Park Cemetery were founded in November 2006 following an initiative by the Tunbridge Wells Theroptimist International to help preserve this historic site. Local organisations and individuals joined forces to form the group, which now operates as a membership organisation. Run by a committee of dedicated volunteers, the Friends work to maintain the cemetery's natural beauty while researching its history and uncovering the stories of those buried within. Membership is open to all for a modest annual subscription. Our team is made up of a diverse group of volunteers, including a genealogist, artisan woodworker, secretary, treasurer, head gardener, writers, researchers, a videographer, and a newsletter editor. Throughout the year, we organise events and collaborate with local schools, other cemeteries and heritage associations to deepen community engagement. You can visit our website for more information. We're now delighted to welcome Karina Rose, an eco-architect from Montreal, Quebec, who visited Woodbury Park Cemetery in November 2024.
Hello, my name is Karina Rose. I'm an architect, ecologist, and artist here in Montreal, Quebec. I'm standing in the middle of a green space that's in the center of a bustling Montreal. It is like the Woodbury Park Cemetery, a haven for city dwellers to get away from the pollution and noise of the urban life. And it is like the cemetery, a diverse flora and fauna space. And it's here that I thought it would be great to talk a bit about bioarchitecture and the future of architecture. As it's very hot out, I'm going to head into the shade of one of the structures in the garden. See you there. The garden I'm sitting in is a vegetable garden and a wild space in the middle of the city. It is gardened by the local community, and the rest changes every year and is semi-wild. And it reminds me a lot of the Woodbury Park Cemetery, which I visited with my dear friend Jeanette in November of 2024. These spaces are so important to how we are going to develop and continue to think about our urban spaces as the climate changes and as resources become more and more unavailable. The Woodbury Park Cemetery is modeled on some of the ideas of John Claudius Loudon, who was first to write about the cemetery design. And I think it's interesting that his thoughts about cemetery design could be applied to bioarchitecture. He thought of the park as a place that is public to walk, reflect, learn about horticulture and botany, meditate. Cemeteries integrate elements of nature and culture. There are built elements and natural elements that need to be maintained and planned. And as places that contribute to the biodiversity, how could we make our buildings as diverse and full of life. In the cemetery, as in this park, but more so in the cemeteries, we're really reminded of that cycle of life and death, and the cycle of the seasons, and of the day. And these are important to think about when we're building. How is a building over time going to last? What kind of cycles of life are going to be lived in it? What kind of cycles of the environment do we want to experience when we're in our building? The light, the air, the temperatures. I think the parks and cemeteries have really important roles to teach us of what an urban space that is connected to nature can feel like, and that our buildings should be oases just as much as these spaces. When we enter a building of bioarchitecture, it should feel like we're being comforted and fed and nourished by our environments. Woodbury Park Cemetery is a wonderful example of volunteers collaborating and maintaining a space which is integral to the town of Tunbridge Wells, and sets an example of what kind of spaces are possible when we dedicate ourselves to nature, biodiversity, and beauty.